Everything's off. Yep, I'm good my end. I'm really excited to be here. And I think as we talk today, we're going to be sharing just how much synergy there is between what I've been through, what I've written about, and your experiences. So really excited. Thank you for having me. It's such a big story. I always find it really hard. Where do I start? At the beginning. I'm going to start at the end and come back. I'll do it in a little circle. So right now, I am someone who helps people who know that they're supposed to be doing more to be seen, to be heard, and to be remembered. And I do that through two main ways at the moment. One is a lot of NLP work, and my book, Get Visible, and my podcast, Entrepreneurs Get Visible, helping people, one, first admit that they want to do something bigger and get over the fear, the shame, be brave. And then the strategic stuff. How do you go from nowhere and nothing and unknown and invisible to becoming known in your field as an expert, as a motivational leader, as a thought leader? How do you do that? What's the process? And another part of that, which I'll talk about in a moment, is that I help people as part of that to launch and grow and monetize effective podcasts. And a part of that journey is because here we go, this is the deep stuff now. The reason I help people to do that is because it helps them get their message out there. And I felt very small and invisible and overlooked and limited 10 years ago, to the point that my current world looked very, very dark. And I was told 10 years ago to expect that I would never walk again as a result of a complication in my third pregnancy. And before I'd had children, I'd been a stage actor. So I'd sort of thought, I'll pop this baby out. It'll all be simple. And then as soon as he's at preschool, I'll be nipping back onto stage, because that always felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. That was a way that I could be recognized, seen, and that getting my voice out there was really important. And it's really interesting now thinking about what I do and what I help other people to do. Those breadcrumbs, if you like, were always there. But I always wanted to do stage and something that was very wordy. So I did a lot of Shakespeare and serious theatre, not frivolous, serious, and never wanted to be on screen. And that's interesting, because even as an actor, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be captured. I didn't want people to be able to play me back, because deep down, there was a fear that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't look right, that I'd be judged. And as a result of feeling as low and depressed as I possibly could, I wasn't getting out of bed because it hurt too much. I was in agony. And I wasn't washing. I was avoiding drinking so that I didn't have to go to the toilet, and I couldn't wash myself. And as a result of that, I went and saw a hypnotherapist, because I just needed to cope. And I knew that it wasn't fair to my children for me to be as dark as I was. I had no inkling that life would change, but I knew that I had to manage myself better. And that one session, we just talked. Wasn't put into formal trance or anything like that. And I didn't know at the time, but what we did was NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which effectively, it gets you to examine your thoughts, your words, your language, the things you say, the things you hold back on saying. What aren't you saying? What aren't you doing in your life that you really want? What sits behind all of the things you're not actioning? And as a result of that, I felt that my world shifted. And I went home and I said to my parents and my husband, I'm not going to talk negatively about where I am. We all know I'm in pain. We all know my life is rubbish right now. I'm not, Yeah, and I couldn't do anything, and I'd been told also not to cuddle the children because my pelvis was so fragile, and I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, just 2-year-old, and a newborn. And I'd chosen to be a stay-at-home mum, and then I was being advised put the children in nursery because you can't cope, and it was really tough. But there are worse things that could happen, right? There are worse things that could happen. And as a result of that of changing the language at home and having, I don't know, something explode in my head that there might be some possibility. What if the doctor was wrong, that I'll never walk again? What if the doctor is right, you can never walk again, but this is the best thing that's ever happened to you because it's going to make you see new possibilities? That was uncomfortable. That was a really uncomfortable thought. But I was being treated for physio at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which is actually the home of the Paralympics. So people in much worse situations than me that were paralysed pretty much from the neck down were going on and doing amazing things. So why did I think, when I still had a lot of mobility, that my life was over? So it really challenged me. But what came out of that was that within 3 weeks, I was able to get myself up to use a Zimmer frame. And it was a long journey from there. But when that in my mind had been an impossibility before, it just was that it gave me new confidence. So there's something in this about how we talk to ourselves and what we say. And so it then got me thinking, well, I've been saying all this time, I want to be a stage actress, but I can't make any money doing it. So really at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why do I want to do that if I think I can't have money? Why, if I want to be a stage actress, I believed I'd have to leave my children. Okay, so I don't actually want to do that. So all the things I was saying I wanted, I had big compelling reasons as to why I didn't want it at the same time. So as a result of that call, and then getting back on my feet, although not really walking yet, I started to see possibility. Well, what's important to me about voice? What's important to me about performing? And for me, it was about worldwide recognition. And I realized through just some serendipitous moments, actually, that I could work as a voiceover artist from home, and because the technology had changed. And again, if it had not been for a serendipitous moment, I wouldn't have had that penny drop in my mind, even though I'd worked in voiceover at the beginning of my acting career. But I had no idea you could do it from home. And so I threw myself into that because I realized that I could still be at home. I could earn money internationally, good money internationally, rather than looking for a chance to be on stage in London where I'd be paid a pittance and never be home. And I could do work that I really loved. So I started off in voiceover, doing commercials. And then once I was properly on my feet and fully recovered, I was like, well, why am I still playing small? Like, I don't actually want to do commercials. I want to use my voice and tell story. So I really focused on audio dramas and audio books and video games. But I focused on it so heavily, but particularly for an American market, because there was more money than working in the UK. And to cut a very long story short, I ended up winning many awards and being a finalist in Hollywood 7 times. And it was that moment, it's just insane. So it was that moment, and that, to put that in context, that was 6 years later. I was on the red carpets in Hollywood, walking, wearing a pair of heels, having won or been a finalist for just about every award that mattered in that industry. And it was just as I was completing my Master NLP practitioner training, which I did for my own personal growth, never because I thought I was going to spread the message on this. And I stood there, and as the photographers took the photographs, I just knew that I had to stop telling other people's stories and tell my own. And now working out, as I came into, I didn't know I was coming into a coaching space. I didn't know I was coming into an online space. I knew that I wanted to reach people, to tell them, if you sort yourself out, you can do anything. And it's that get visible. It's seeing yourself, letting that real you be seen by you, acknowledging it's there, acknowledging it matters, acknowledging it exists, and then telling people the things you're good at. Because when you do that and then you're strategic about it, you can do anything. And the beautiful moment is that I thought I was leaving all of the audio world behind, literally that the door had closed and I was now this. I was a motivational speaker, author, whatever, even though I'd not done it yet, that's what I was. But what I came to realize in the entrepreneurial space is that people don't know how to get their message out there. And podcasting is so powerful if you get it right. And so now I see my work as that way to help people switch the lights on, and to help leaders get their message out there, to amplify that message so we can bring more people up the mountainside and live a much better life. So there we go. It's a big story. Yeah. It means showing up and leading. And I never thought of myself as a leader before any of my NLP work, and I never would have seen myself in that way, because in my acting career, it was all about ego. It was all about me. I want to be seen. I want to push to be seen. I want to push to prove, to get that feedback back. Whereas now, I think through doing a lot of really deep mindset work, there was literally a switch for me, that what I really want to do, how I really want to show up in the world, is to motivate, inspire, and awaken, like switch people on. And it means that even when my personal life gets tough, because no matter how much mindset work we do, we're human and we have wobbles and things. And no matter how much you think you straightened yourself out with the mindset stuff, something happens and you have to go, oh, I'm wallowing in this. What's this all about? It's showing up regardless of that. And that isn't always easy, and that does take bravery. Um, and deciding that, in the foundations of everything I've built for my business, it's still challenging to decide I'm leaving what I was doing behind and I'm now going to stand for this. That takes incredible bravery when everyone around you, and I'm sure many of you out there have nuggets of dreams or ambitions, or maybe you've got the embryo of a business, or maybe you're somewhere along the business line, that people around you think you're a bit nuts, and they're a bit, oh really, do you think that's going to work? Well, you know what, if you don't follow that light, that passion, that inspiration, that feeling that you're supposed to do it, where are you going to be in 10 years time? Because sometimes you have to get started and fail. I don't even like the word fail, but everyone understands that concept. Get started and do it imperfectly. So if I hadn't 3 and a bit years ago said, I don't know what it looks like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I have to let people know this, and I am now, all my energy, all my focus is going in this direction. And my husband, I can remember my husband, and he'll support me in most things, but even he was like, really, you're leaving behind all of the money and the income that you're bringing in? Really? And I was like, well, yeah, it feels right. I can't even describe it. But I got so many things wrong in that first 18 months about my messaging. But it wasn't wrong, because if I hadn't started, there is no way now that I'd have a #1 international podcast and be a #1 best-selling author. There is no way. But I had to start. And that's the brave thing. Starting when everyone around you thinks you're a little bit crazy and doesn't get it, and you don't have the support network, you don't have the connections, but knowing you're going to do it anyway and trusting yourself, I think that takes real bravery. Mm-hmm. My training in terms of mindset is in NLP and timeline therapy, and I tried very hard in my book Get Visible to allow people to allow people an opportunity to do an exercise without a practitioner present. And for me, it's about going back. When you think about the thing that you're scared of doing, who is it you're scared of being rejected by? And where did that come from? What are the words and the voice that you're hearing? And I talk about, very often it's a historic monster in our mind. So this could be a teacher that was cruel at school. It could be your mother or your father who love you and you love them, but you know, those relationships are not straightforward. And it could be that they've said something when you were growing up that you took to mean that you shouldn't behave in a particular way. It could be an old school friend or a friend in your formative years at university or wherever. Stop and think, like, that voice in my head that's telling me don't be stupid, I can't do it, or whatever cruel and nasty thing they are saying in your head. Well, that's actually one, it's not really them, it's you, it's your subconscious protecting you. And that protection mechanism has done really well for you for a very long time. But when you actually go into what do they look like? What are they doing? Knowing it's part of my subconscious, what's the message that that part of me wants me to hear? What is that? And does that still serve me? And then what's the other side of this? What's the other part of me? The part that feels as though this is right, the part of me that wants to expand and grow. What's the message there? And actually, very often the message, when you really go deep on the language behind each thing you're saying, very often it's the same highest purpose. And I advise people to journal a lot, but journal free flow, but with intent, so that you are deliberately picking up all those times you say something negative about yourself, about your abilities, all those times that you are really aware of how someone else has judged you. Pick it out, because if you examine in your mind and on paper what those particular moments and those historic monsters mean to you, actually you can get beneath why did it hurt that they said that particular thing, and what decision did I make at age 7, 12, 18 as a result of that particular thing. So one of the examples that I talk about a lot in my book is that I was attacked by a gang of 20 girls when I was 16. And yeah, it was an organized, yeah, it was organized by one of my best friends and her boyfriend, and through my NLP work, I didn't know that this was conscious. I wasn't conscious that this was something that constantly held me back. But I would often talk about, if someone criticized me in later adult life, I would feel attacked, and I would use that. I would use, words like it's a smack in the face, because that traumatic event, and now I understand so much more about how the brain works. That traumatic event, I had not dealt with it at a subconscious level, and so I was protecting myself. And one of the significant things about that moment, although it was very dramatic, was that I'd been truthful to myself, and I'd spoken up about particular behavior. I'd used my voice, and I'd been open, and I'd been flowing. And as a result of what I said, I then obviously had this horrendous consequence. And that was keeping me stuck in many, many, many ways. And I think ultimately that was what was keeping me stuck as a performer, why I wasn't having the success that I wanted, because I was always scared. And I'd put on the brave armor, but that's not real bravery. And the more you understand those significant moments that have happened to you, and that they don't have to be as massive as something I've just discussed. They could be something minor, but you have taken it to mean a particular thing. And I think working with somebody to unravel that has been one of the greatest things I've ever done. And I continue to do that. Actually, I'm about to start working with someone again recently, because even though I felt like I'd unlocked lots of that, I recently had some quite public criticism that floored me for a couple of days. And so I think, okay, I know what this is. I can literally feel in my body where I'm affected by this, and it's in my face. So some of that, even though I've worked through a lot of it, it's still there. So what's that? What's coming up? So again, I keep working, because I know that every time I work on that, I can push through it. Or not even push through it, I can take the building blocks down, so it's all more open. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't know what the right help is. And I really hope through podcasts and self help books and whatever else that gets out there, more and more people come to understand that it's not always just about talking about it. There are now, there's so much more understanding about the brain. And so if you go and see someone for NLP or hypnosis or RTT, rapid transformational therapy, or something that is about swapping out your past experiences and seeing that actually, if you can unlock them, all the good stuff comes after. It's not always about talking about it and blame culture, which can happen in some therapy, in some counseling. But it's about realizing that the impact of what happened to you and how you thought about it actually can be undone, because you can undo and remake new neural pathways. And that's really powerful. And I hope that through the work that people like you and I are doing, Tiffany, that more people come to understand this thing I'm believing about myself. There is someone I can go and speak to. There is some way that this can be undone. This is not the truth of me. And it's not a question of, it's not necessarily a question of, well, I'm either fine or I have mental health issues. There's so much scope in between for making massive changes to how you think and feel. Yeah. So so probably the best thing, because you're listening to a podcast, I know you like podcasts, is come over to listen to Entrepreneurs Get Visible. And you'll find out a lot more from me there, and how you can get in touch and that kind of stuff. But I think going and listening there to really, my advice about how you go from overlooked, stuck, and feeling like you're nothing, to being able to achieve anything. And I really do believe that is open to anybody. But I didn't used to see the world in that way. Yeah. Yes. And it's interesting because, there are experiences in my life. Of course, I wish they'd never happened. But if I'd not had the darkness, I would not be a fraction of the person I am today. And I wouldn't feel the need to speak up, and I wouldn't feel the need to be seen. And I think once you've tapped into the power of that real mindset, doesn't even cover it, change work, transformation work that is accessible to everyone, you sort of want everyone else to know, because the world would literally be a better place if everybody understood at these tools and accessed them. And well, I wanted it. I wanted It's interesting, that whole thing as well. When I started, I'd had that book in my mind for many years, and I was originally going to write it for the voiceover industry. But every time I sat down to write it, it felt like my message is too big. And I actually went along to Hay House, which is a big self-help publishing publisher. That's the word. Publishing company, and they have this competition every year. I know they do it in Australia, they do it in the US, and they do it in the UK, where one person wins the competition based on their book proposal. And I felt so strongly like, my book is going to be a success, so surely I'm going to win this competition. And I actually got really great feedback from them, but didn't win. But the feedback also included, you need to change your audience. Nobody's going to want to listen to you as an entrepreneur when you've not got millions in the bank and when you've not got tons of followers. So you either need to follow the creatives that you talk to or the entrepreneurs, but your book's never going to sell. And it was a very sweet moment when I just decided, I don't care. My message has to get out there. I'm going to self-publish, and I'm going to mess up the self-publishing. It almost doesn't matter to me because this book has to happen. And again, that's that imperfect action. But I could have listened to what they said and be frozen by that professional opinion, and never have got that work out there. And what Tiff and I are saying, just this week alone, we've read each other's books. We didn't know each other. We didn't know each other a month ago. We've met online, we've seen each other online, but didn't really know each other's stories, just that we're people doing things in this kind of space. And yet we have both been moved by each other's work. And I will constantly send people to Tiffany's work and her story for the right people who need to hear that, and vice versa. But we couldn't have done that if we've not got our stories out there. And what I loved about both of our books is that we showed some really raw, quite uncomfortable, quite ugly parts of our younger selves. And actually, people need to hear that. People do need to hear, I've thought really dark stuff, and there's elements of myself I haven't liked in the past. Uh, because if we don't show those parts of ourselves, then we're so disconnected from the people that we want to help. Oh. Oh, absolute pleasure. And Tiffany's coming on my show very, very soon. And again, it's going to be amazing because we're going to have a conversation from a completely different angle. But there's so much on our paths and our stories that have crossed over without us knowing, and parallels. It's incredible. So I think we'll dive a lot into that on my show. So yeah, maybe once it's live, if maybe put a link in your show notes so everyone can kind of jump from one podcast to the next.